So the talking is done, man. It's all about what's going on in Detroit this weekend, and it's going to be for everything between the Vikings and the Lions. We'll discuss that and more here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen on the second edition of a double dose of the NFL, Locked On NFL, where we bring you a double dose of NFL action each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Tony Wiggins, the barber here in the barbershop, joined by local expert Chris Carter, Locked On NFL, Locked On Steelers. Here's what we're going to discuss today. The Jets get an award from me, believe it or not. We're going to talk about who Defensive Player of the Year is. We're going to hang around the AFC North for that. Staying in the AFC North, Burrow sends a message to the Bengals, one that we've heard a lot in the past. And the battle at Ford Field is where we're going to kick everything off today here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, it's Thursday, and Crossover Thursday around our network is presented by PrizePicks. Download the app and use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. And make sure you head over to Amazon Music and check out Locked On NFL on Amazon Music. Mr. Carter. There was a song Jay-Z and Wayne made, said Mr. Carter, and both of them are named Mr. Carter. What's happening with you today, and you ready for this battle that's going on up north?
I am him, and I am ready because this is going to be a big battle. I think everyone's been talking about it for a while, and it's so crazy that it comes down to the one seed it's going to determine this. I'm really intrigued by this matchup, by this entire division. The Packers had their chance to kind of do something about it. They kind of fell off. Kudos to both of these squads. I think everyone expected the Lions to be here. In fact, they were my Super Bowl favorite from the start of the season. I picked them in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette to win the Super Bowl this year over the Baltimore Ravens. But man, the Vikings have been extremely impressive, especially considering the quarterback that they drafted with their first-round pick ain't even played this year because he's been hurt. And so Sam Darnold has shown everyone that he's better than you've ever thought he was, including me. So kudos to them. I think it's been very impressive. I'm really excited to see this matchup. I'm also really excited to see because whoever loses this game gets the 5 seed in the NFC, which is so crazy. It's so crazy, but it's how divisions work. It's how the playoffs should work. I think it'll be really interesting to see who gets this bye and who has to end up playing next week.
And what's crazy is that means that first game ain't going to be easy because if I'm guesstimating right, Chris, the 4th seed is going to probably be Tampa or Atlanta. Or if it's Atlanta, it's South team. If it's Tampa, look, if there's a team that don't give a, they already beat Detroit and Philly. Mm-hmm. If that's one team right now that's gotten a little bit healthy. Now, they had a bump in the road in Dallas a couple of weeks ago. But, yeah, we'll talk about that. And we're going to also talk about the Minnesota quarterback situation moving forward. But I want to get from the crossover, I want to hear Matt Derry and Luke Braun talk this up a little bit. And when we get back, I'm going to bring up something very interesting about the Vikings.
Luke, it's great to see you, brother. This is crazy, right? No one expected this, but this is how it should be. And I know Dan Campbell's excited for the Lions to go through this. But what are the thoughts of the Vikings right now as they have a chance to get the 1 seed and go on the road and shock the world?
It's funny. So they just posted, as of this recording, they just posted their weekly field access segment, which is kind of a sound FX segment that they do after wins. And right after the game against Green Bay, it's Harrison Phillips is talking to a teammate and he says, well, that was the game before the game. So they've been looking at this one, right? And they've, I think, been very keenly aware since the Bills beat the Lions, like since that day, that they went, if we can win out, we can take this to Ford Field with everything on the line. I think that has been like the idea. Now they've taken care of that business. They won the 3 games after that. And now they are seeing this as, this could be impactful to the NFC Championship. At this point, no matter who wins this game, it feels like I'll be surprised if we don't talk again on one of these, Matt.
The Vikings should feel confident. And one reason is yesterday I said that I think that they're the best coach team in the NFL on both sides of the ball in totality. And I'm not just talking about X and O's and schemes. I'm just talking about how I saw that scene the other day with O'Connell sitting back watching his team. And it seems like this dude always pushes or pulls the right buttons. A lot of people are trying to speedball Minnesota past the moment and talk about the quarterback situation and what they should do moving forward with Sam Darnold. And I know that's a question, but this team seems like the one that's really into the moment. They're really into this. This is what they have been myopic focusing on once they saw Detroit lose the way that they lost early this season. And they're like, nah, I think we can take them out.
No, I think these two teams are a lot closer than a lot of people thought they would be. The Vikings aren't just doing some one-hit wonder stuff with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Darnold. This defense is alive. Yes. Brian Flores has done this, and crazy enough, I covered Brian Flores. Remember, he was supposed to be out the league. When he got booted from the Dolphins, he sued the league. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on. People say, well, and people were like, well, good luck. He'll never work in the NFL again. And all of a sudden, Mike Tomlin hits him up on the phone and says, hey, buddy, why don't you come on down to Pittsburgh and show everyone you still got it? Mm-hmm. And not only does he help the Steelers, he proves to everyone, oh, no, yeah, Brian Flores is that dude. He can still help you win. So he goes to Minnesota. But one thing Brian Flores said he did when he was in Pittsburgh was he watched the college team in town, Pitt football, and the way that they play defense, the style of just reckless abandon, where Pat Narduzzi's defense just blitzes you and relies on a lot of little man coverage and quarter coverage, where they kind of just bring heat and they say you're going to either beat us or you're going to get hit hard. And Brian Flores adapted several of those concepts into his scheme. It's been well reported by ESPN, and it's made the Vikings defense really dangerous. In fact, they got quite a few Pitt guys on their team, and it's led to some success. And so now you're talking about the number 4 scoring defense in the NFL right now. The Vikings have been controlling the line of scrimmage. They've been an aggressive secondary. I've been really impressed by how they've handled that. They're also the number 2 rushing defense in the NFL, right, which I think clashes really well with what the Lions do, because the Lions want to be a balanced team. They want to hit you with the run so that Jared Goff can work the pass. And I think that that's a big part of this. They deserve all the credit for being here. And I'm really intrigued by this matchup. I think all eyes will be on this game on Sunday. And and again, it's crazy that the loser of this game will have to play next week, and the winner gets the bye off. And they both earned that chance to be there. Right. But like you said, the loser would have to play the Buccaneers in Tampa, which, despite their 9-7 record, they've shown they can be an uppity team that gets up in you and makes things life hard on you. So I think there's a lot of mistake on the lines here. I also think that if you're one of those teams, you got to watch out, because the Eagles are a really good team. Yes. The 1 seed, not only do you get the bye, but you're guaranteed to play the lowest seed coming out of this. Now, crazy enough, that lowest seed could end up being the Vikings. Or it could be the loser of this game. If the Lions are the 5 seed or the Vikings are the 5 seed. But you want that opportunity to say, hey, we don't have to worry about the first round. We want someone to come to our house, and we want it to most likely either be Tampa, Minnesota, or Detroit, based off of who wins this game, or the Commanders or the Packers. And if it's one of those teams, or Atlanta, because they're still alive, but if you would get that, that's a lot better than having to play the Buccaneers in their house. And then if you win that game, you most likely either go to the winner of this team's house, or you go to the Eagles, or you go to the Rams. And I've been telling people for about a month now, these Rams, after they got healthy, they have figured some things out, and they are a dangerous team. And I would not overlook them in the NFC playoffs right now.
Everybody's dangerous that has pedigree. And you talked about Tampa and you talked about the Rams. Both of those organizations are still led by men that won championships and that were a part of that organization. And they still have some players that still remember that. Quick note about the Vikings I wanted to bring up. It reminds me of another situation. It's not quite apples to apples, because it was a little bit different at the quarterback situation. But back in the day, everybody remembers the greatest show on turf. They actually signed Trent Green to a big contract away from Washington. And that they hired Mike Martz, the offense coordinator, quarterbacks coach from Washington, right? Come be the coordinator for Trent Green. Trent Green got hurt in the preseason. They had to go with another option at quarterback. That quarterback that they went with was the dude that they didn't expect to be going with, and that's Kurt Warner. History wrote itself then, and it looks like it might be writing itself the same way here for Minnesota. We'll see if they can finish this thing out, but I'm looking forward to that this weekend. All right, so Joe Burrow, he has something to play for this weekend, although he's going to need a little bit of help. But before we got to that game, Joe Burrow did put the future business in the lap of the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know if it was the greatest thing to do, and it was the best time to do it, but we'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Gametime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year, and the energy and excitement was absolutely unforgettable, man. If you've never seen Wyclef in front of an orchestra, make sure you do it. Now, Gametime has made it easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime and download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code. I'm going to spell it for you. LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Rolling along here on Locked On NFL with local expert Chris Carter. Talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. I love when we can just kind of line this up organically and we end up in the, now you know the whole league, but you really, really, really know the AFC North, right? Mm-hmm. Cover those Pittsburgh Steelers every single day. And you know a lot about the teams in that division. Well, Joe Burrow sent a little bit of a message to the Bengals, not about this game this weekend, it has playoff implications, but about the future and how they are able to, or how they aren't always able to pay people when they're supposed to. And I think he's taken up for my man T. Higgins, and he's taken up for his wide receiver, Jamar Chase. Listen to what the guys from Locked On Bengals had to say, and then we'll come back and give you our thoughts.
In Joe Burrow's last pregame press conference of the year, he sent a very clear message to the Cincinnati Bengals front office about their player retention strategies. James, there was nothing terribly subtle about the way Joe Burrow talked about the Cincinnati Bengals' failures to get deals done early with key players in his press conference earlier this week. It's fascinating comments from Joe before this final game of the season.
Yeah, very fascinating. I mean, the fact that he was willing to offer what he did, not just about T. Higgins, and we can discuss that, but about the front office in general. One thing that we've talked about, maybe he just listens to the Locked On Bengals, by the way. Wouldn't be shocked. Joe Burrow's a big Locked On Bengals listener, especially in the offseason when he has some time. But in all seriousness, everyone has said how you need to get these deals done early. If you had been aggressively trying to get T done 2 years ago when he was extension eligible, nearly 2 years ago, then you don't have this problem where you're playing him on the franchise tag and you're wondering if it could fit, if he could stay. Jesse Bates is obviously another key example, prime example of that.
Not going to take up for the Bengals when it comes to spending money. Everybody has called them the cheapest organization in the league for a long time. I'm also not going to pretend that I don't recognize the fact that even though we can say, okay, it's a weird time to bring this up because you're playing for, everything, Joe might actually be trying to galvanize those dudes that's in the locker room with him because he's the dude in the organization that has the most power, and he's willing to speak up for other guys to get money. And I think that resonates with teammates.
I think it resonates with teammates. I don't know if it resonates with the Bengals. I also don't know if it resonates with their salary cap. Because here's the thing. They do have a lot of salary cap space next year. But a big part of that is this team has a lot of holes in it. There's a reason why Joe Burrow is an MVP candidate and Jamar Chase is a Triple Crown wide receiver candidate and T. Higgins is one of the best receivers in the NFL. And they're on the verge of a losing season if they lose this weekend. And the reason is because their O-line stinks, their defense stinks. And from top to bottom, there's problems in the front, there's problems in the secondary, there's problems in linebacker. They got issues all over the place, and they got to solve them fast. Otherwise, the Bengals are going to be still a struggling team with one of the best wide receiver quarterback combos in the NFL, maybe the best wide receiver quarterback combo in the NFL. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, if you're the Bengals, What is the number that you're willing to pay to Jamar Chase to keep him long term? Because that still hasn't been solved. He's a $21 million, $21.8 million cap hit next year. You want to get that extension with him. You want to lock him in. But the way Jamar Chase is playing, you're going to have to pay him 30 plus. You're going to pay him a lot of money. And then T. Higgins, like you saw the way, without T. Higgins, they don't beat the Broncos. They're not even talking about the playoffs right now. Like all the things we're talking about, they can get into the playoffs. They can get a winning record. They don't get that without T. Higgins and Chase and Burrow. So they're carrying the team. But if you pay Chase what he's worth, and then you pay Higgins what he's worth, after you've already paid Burrow what he's worth, you are going to leave yourself with a very narrow road to keep players like Trey Hendrickson, to keep players like Orlando Brown, and then to find new guys in free agency to come in and help you right now. Now, you can hit in the draft, but they've been trying to hit in the draft. They've been trying to draft guys like Amarius Mims that can help them and trying to draft guys to help their secondary. I think Daxton Hill was one of those guys. But they haven't hit on those just yet. And maybe those guys need more time to develop. But, man, to me, Wig, this is a tough situation for them because if and when they let one of these three go, and not one of these three, one of those two, and it's going to be Higgins if they let go of anybody, there's going to be a lot of displeasure, and I wonder how Joe Burrow is going to respond to that. And so it's a challenge for this front office. Now, if they can find a way to somehow make all three of these guys work, sign Chase and Higgins to long-term deals and keep them around, kudos to them, but they're going to have to work some magic to build around them what they currently do not have, which is a good defense and a better offensive line to protect Joe Burrow. Because I think another thing that Joe Burrow has done that's amazing this year, and I think this adds to his whole he can be the MVP case, is he has dodged so much pressure. His footwork, his ability to extend plays while pressure is breathing right into his face has been so impressive. There were times I'm like, man, this guy's going to get hurt again if they're not careful. But Joe Burrow has been the difference maker to do that. So he's earning his money. Jamar Chase has earned his money. All three of these guys have earned big contracts. The question will be, what will be the Bengals strategy to making this happen? They might need some help from both Chase and Higgins being willing to take, hey, we'll take lesser deals. We won't take what we actually could really make in the NFL right now because we want to play with Joe Burrow. And Higgins has expressed he's interested in something like that. But players say that and fans think, oh, well, they'll just take like $15 million a year. That'd be fine. It ain't like that. It's going to be more like maybe $20 million here and there. And maybe they'll move your money around. But these players, they want this is their biggest shot. This is the best shot that any of these guys will have to make the most money that they can in their career with these contracts coming off their rookie deals, playing as well as they have. They want to capitalize on it. They know that this is their chance to do it. I have a hard time seeing that they're able to pay all three of these guys what they're worth and then still rebuild the team that they need to rebuild around them.
You're exactly right. The Bengals and the Cowboys ought to be a case study of how you draft good players, but you don't team build very well. Because the one thing you don't need two wide receivers making max money. Just like you don't need two corners making max money. You say, well, if you get good players, you got to pay them, Wig. That's not what I'm talking about. They got two guys that were drafted within a year of each other, and both of them play basically the same position. That you cannot do that in the NFL. It's your job to get good players, but sometimes you got to space it out. Like this would be a perfect situation for the Bengals to have a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. A rookie contract, basically what they've had. All of these dudes, Burrow, Higgins, and Chase, all of the success that the Bengals have had, they've had it while all three of those guys are on rookie contracts. So what you need a guy like that now when you re-sign one of those big-time players. That's what it is. It's like you got to kind of almost space this thing out, but you're right. I don't know how they're going to be able to figure it out. And for them to be able to figure it out and to be able to build the rest of the team around those three guys, they got to be good at, don't be surprised when I say this. You got to be good at team building. When you're going to have less money, and you got to now do what some of the good teams do and spread that out across your roster, I think it takes a really good front office, and I'm not sure that the Bengals absolutely have that. We're going to hang around the AFC North, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's all about this conversation is going to be about Miles Garrett and TJ Watt. We ain't going to even play around with it. Defensive Player of the Year in a place where you need to play a lot of defense, especially in the cold weather. We're going to hit that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. That's right. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it is not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. There are games with actual meaning being played in Week 18. And right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick a win or a W to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. Think about this. T. Higgins, we just talked about it. He wants a contract, right? I benched him last week in my fantasy championship. If I had not, I would have won because he had over 40 points. I think he's going to do it this weekend, and you can probably bet on that too. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, moving along here on our Crossover Thursday, which is sponsored by PrizePicks across our network. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Barbershop Show, and this is my man, Chris Carter. Defensive Player of the Year, CC. We've had this discussion before. There have been times in the past when people won when TJ Watt had it's almost like TJ Watt is like the flip side of Lamar Jackson. Like, I'm so good all the time. People just expect it, and they don't even want to give me an award, one that he probably should have won before. It is going to come down to two people, in my opinion, and that is both of those players. I think Watt probably get it this time because of team success as opposed to Cleveland, which has been a little bit of a mess.
I mean, it's been a giant mess in Cleveland. It's funny. I said this if you go way back to the AFC North preview at the start of the season when the Lockdown Browns guy was saying, "Oh, Steelers going to be in last place for the first time since 1989." I was born in 1989. That's how long it's been. And I was like, buddy, Steelers ain't finishing last place. They're probably finishing at worst in second. And lo and behold, that's probably where they're going to finish. Lo and behold, I said the Browns, they going to be in last place. Lo and behold, who's in last place? And it's kind of predictable with this Browns organization. And look, Miles Garrett, I think of the hype behind him right now is, well, he's leading the NFL in sacks. You got to give it to him if he leads the NFL in sacks.
Watt did too.
I was who led the NFL in sacks last year and in 2021 and in 2020. He's done it 3 times in his career, which is insane. In one of those years, he set the NFL or he tied the NFL sack record, but he's had 22 and a half sacks. The only person ever done that is Michael Strahan. And so I'm like, kind of like, okay, if you're on the bandwagon of Miles Garrett again, I hear you arguing about sacks, but TJ Watt has more tackles, more forced fumbles, more passes broken up, and he's better against the run. And his defense, like last year, is better than the Browns. They're giving up less points per game. His team last year, you could say, well, the Browns were marginally better. They had a slight edge on them in the division. This year, it's not even close. Like I think last year, the one thing you could say was the Browns as a team had finished better than the Steelers did last year, and so you could say, well, the Browns were the second team in the AFC North. The Steelers were the third. So, Miles Garrett's the difference maker in that. I could hear that. Well, the Steelers are clinched the playoffs like a month ago, and the Browns have been out the playoffs for more, maybe a month or more. So all those arguments are out. The one thing you can say is the sack numbers. And listen, Miles Garrett's still a great player. I think him and TJ Watt are still the 2 best edge rushers in the NFL. But I also have to say, maybe you should look around the NFL a little bit more for Defensive Player of the Year, because there's one particular defense who we were just talking about, the Minnesota Vikings. Their leading sack man is Andrew Van Ginkel. Not only does he have an 11.5 sacks, which ties TJ Watt, he got 2 interceptions. And 2 pick sixes. Like he's been making some plays out there. He also has 72 tackles. That's all. No, excuse me. That's that is him. Which is more than TJ Watt. He's played well there. I also really like Nick Bonito, who also has 11.5 sacks. He has a pick six, and he has a fumble return for a touchdown. Now, again, I think TJ Watt, he does a lot more there. And I think the one thing that happened last year was a lot of the people who depend on analytics to do their analyzing for them. They said, well, Miles Garrett's double team rate, according to Pro Football Focus, is so much higher than TJ Watt. TJ Watt doesn't never get double teamed. And I was like, okay, that's incorrect, because I watch games and he gets double teamed every week. This year, PFF said, we're going to add a chip statistic. And I'm like, a chip statistic? What's that? It's when 2 offensive linemen don't solely dedicate themselves to a player, but you're getting contacted by multiple players. Like, so now you're admitting that you needed to calculate for this.
Just keep adding stuff, right?
Yeah, just right.
They're going to put the Pythagorean theorem in it next. I ain't never used that in my life. It's coming. But I do want to listen to Matt Williamson, because he does give a little bit of a different perspective. But check this out. I agree with you, and I agree with Matt, and I'll tell you why. Because there's two things at play here that are identical twins. If you just check this out.
So I'll get this out of the way. I'm from Pittsburgh, and TJ Watt's been the thick of this thing now for the last couple of years, of course. Now, I have said, even on my radio show that is Steelers.com, I think Miles Garrett is the best defensive player walking the planet right now.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, there's been times I've kind of feared walking to my car late at night and at the radio station or turning it on in fear it might go up. People are more hated in my hometown than Garrett. How could you possibly think anyone on the planet is better than Watt, let alone that guy? I hate him, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, it's a fraction. I mean, Bosa, Micah Parsons, Watt, and Garrett are the elite edge rushers, in my opinion. And if you put them in any order, I would understand. I think Garrett's the freakiest and the best defensive player on the planet right now.
Here's the thing I want to dissect with this. I don't disagree with what he just said, but I don't think the award is for that, because if that's the case, Michael Jordan would have won MVP every single year. LeBron would have won every MVP just about every single year. Right. Kobe would have won MVP at least 6-7 years in his career when Steve Nash was a two-time MVP. Nash wasn't better. It's not about who you think. If we put all of these dudes in a bag and we could just have a draft,
right? Who's
the first defensive player? Yeah, it'll be Miles Garrett. But that's not what this is. This is about what have you done now and how does it impact your team? And see, here's what I think. This is why I compare Watt to, I know the Ravens and Steelers fans like, I don't be comparing that joker to Lamar, but this is why I'm going to say this, because people talk about Lamar, and the first thing that they say when comparing him to Burrow and Josh Allen is he's got Derrick Henry behind him. Newsflash, he won 2 MVPs without Derrick Henry. Okay. Yeah, first of all. And they'll say about TJ, well, he's got all these other guys. He's got Highsmith, and he has Cam, and he has, this dude, and Minka, and he's, like you say, the analytics, well, he's not getting doubled as much. And then the thing that they do also with Watt is they give credit to the other guy as being he has no help. That to me is what they're doing a little bit with the kid in Buffalo at quarterback. They're saying he's doing way more with less. What is Miles Garrett doing more with less? He's a great player, but Cleveland is in the dumpster right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I look at key moments in games that you step up. Watt has stepped up several times to help the Steelers win big games this year. Garrett's been absent in a lot of those moments, and again, to Matt's point, if we're talking pure athlete, sure, Miles Garrett gets that. He's a freak of nature when it comes to that kind of stuff, and he deserves credit.
He might be top 5 all time when it comes to that.
Right, like he's built just insanely well, but when you're absent, when your team needs you to hold on, like people forget, like the Steelers, like people say, oh well, the Browns had a rough year. Deshaun Watson got hurt, and this guy got hurt. The Steelers made the playoffs with Mason Rudolph last year.
Come on,
and
man.
TJ Watt's a big factor in that because he led the NFL in sacks for a third time to get there. So don't give me that. TJ Watt has held his team. In fact, there was a season where TJ Watt missed half the year, and the Steelers were like 2-6 because of it. He comes back, and they find a way to get to 9-8. They just missed out on the playoffs that season. But like he's shown time and time again that he is that guy. And in fact, if you look at the Steelers' record when TJ Watt doesn't play in a game, it's like 1-11 or something like that. Miles Garrett, when he's not in the game, the Browns find a way to win sometimes without him. So I think that this conversation, this year, this is the first time, because Miles Garrett has 14 sacks, TJ Watt has 11. This is the first time you can say, well, he's better at getting sacks, because I think that hasn't happened since these two have been in that conversation. But to Aaron Donald's point, Aaron Donald, one of the greatest defensive tackles of all time, maybe the greatest defensive tackles of all time. He himself, when he retired, he admitted, he was like, hey, man, there was 1 or 2 times when I got it, TJ Watt should have.
Yep.
And if Aaron Donald can admit that, I think Miles Garrett needs to admit it too.
Yeah, he needs to admit it. Anytime it involves Pittsburgh, I just remember him snatching that dude's helmet and hitting the dude with the helmet. He ain't going to admit that, man. When it comes to this deal. I'm going to give an award real quick, and I know we ain't got but a couple minutes here, to the Jets, right? My man John Butchko said, who covers the Jets, Locked On Jets, said that Bill Belichick, and the report was actually confirmed, according to The Athletic, that Bill Belichick contacted the Jets. I love Belichick, but the Jets, they're cheating us out of what would have been a circus. I wish they'd have done it. I swear I would, because people don't remember this if you're too young. Before he coached the Patriots, Bill Belichick was hired by the Jets and like quit after like a day, 24 hours or something, and said, "No, I'm going to New England." And then he goes to win a dynasty. If they'd have done this, dog, after these 2 years with Aaron Rodgers, I would have just sat back with some popcorn and laughed at the irony of them having to turn to Belichick after he walked out on them and created a dynasty right up the street. No clip. We just gonna talk.
Oh, my bad. Listen, that report from the Athletic was pretty loud noise about the Jets. Is very obvious about what's wrong right now in New York with the ownership, with how they've operated. And the shame of it is, I really think Robert Saleh was building something. And this was why, like, when they were like, "Oh, Aaron Rodgers coming to the Jets 2 years ago, that's going to put this team over the top." And all it's done is destroy what Saleh was building. The defense that he was putting together, the confidence, because it's not just the players. It's not like Madden where you can just assemble, high overall players and just say, "Well, that team's going to kick some butt when we play the computer this week." You have to be able to get a team to believe in itself, to have culture, to have everything. And Aaron Rodgers just blew it up from the inside and got you to get rid of the head coach that was building that up for you. And now your players are like, "I don't want to be here." Garrett Wilson don't want to be around no more. He was gonna be one of the phenomenal receivers in the NFL. So yeah, I think the Jets. And like, here's my thing: Bill Belichick called them. Sometimes I think Bill Belichick's a troll. I think. I think he could have been like, "Hey, y'all want me to psych? I didn't want to be there anyways." But Bill Belichick's been looking for his comeback. He's just a competitive. He's addicted to competition. He's addicted to trying to prove that he's the best that ever was. And that's not a bad thing. That's just kind of how he's wired. But I look at the Jets and I just think, who wants to be part of this organization right now? Because you had good things going for you. You tore it down for what? And like, I don't see an easy way out of their situation. Aaron Rodgers is just a mess right now. Their team is just a mess. No one believes in anything right now. So I think if the Jets are going to go in any direction, it's going to be getting a new young coach who you give full control to. Aaron Rodgers, if you say anything to this coach, get up. We don't care how much we pay. Get up out of you. You can collect your unemployment check, outside. We'll give you all your dead money. But the Jets have to commit to being a better organization right away. That starts with taking control back from Aaron Rodgers, giving it back to a new coach and a new coaching staff, and then rebuilding a new nucleus. And it's just a shame because you had one, you were building one, you had young players that were believing in your organization, and now they have every reason to say, "Get me out of here. I want nothing to do with y'all."
Absolutely. You married the solid person, the one that works 60 hours a week and has a pension. And then you went to the club one night and fell for the dude that had his shirt unbuckled with taco meat and a gold chain. And that's what happened. And see, you should have stayed. You should have stayed.
That sounded very specific.
Yeah, you should have stayed with Steady Eddie. But now you with this dude with this fake Versace shirt on. And see, that's what happens to you. That doesn't happen to you a lot on NFL because neither me or Tyler Rowland wear fake Versace shirts. But we will be here every single day talking about football with you. And you can tune in each and every day as we use to help the local experts here on Locked On NFL to give you the biggest stories from around the league. All right, go put your fake Versace shirt on, Chris, and get to working, man. We got money to make out there, brother.
I got real Versace shirts. No, too much money.
We'll see y'all next time here on Locked On NFL.